NetsBoy, so let's hear what he has to say. His name is NetsBoy, he thinks the world is all over when the Nets just can't play.
What up, Net fans? NetsBoy here, bring your latest, and you're really not looking so great right now, Brooklyn Nets news. All right, so it's been like a week and a half since my last NetsBoy episode, and we have a lot to talk about, a lot to discuss, because the Nets have lost 3 straight games. They look terrible, and it's just been a giant disappointment. So I want to address why I think it is that the Nets have lost these last 3 games and what it is that I'm seeing from this team. Before I start, I do want to apologize if I have trouble talking or so on and so forth. Despite my best efforts, like so many people in this world, I tested positive for COVID just a couple days ago, and I am experiencing a little symptoms. Nothing serious. I'm doing all right. I'll be fine. But you can hear it in my voice. I'm a little bit congested right now. That's been like the most of my symptoms. I did have a fever earlier on, but I'm over that. So I'm doing all right. I don't know how I got COVID, to be honest. If you know me personally, you know that I don't go anywhere without a mask. I don't have much of a social life as it is, so I don't really go anywhere. And and I'm always washing my hands and staying away from people. I really have. So personally, I have no idea how I really got it, but everyone's getting it. This new variant, this Omicron variant, or whatever the heck it's called, I call it the Omarion variant, like everyone does, even though that's not what it's called. It's not a R&B singer, but I don't know how I got it. So my word to the wise to the few people that watch this video is just be careful, because if I manage to somehow catch it, taking the precautions that I've been taking, almost anyone can get it. So just be smart out there. So so just bear with me as best as I can if I start coughing or, my voice cracks a little bit. Because like I said, right now it's all kind of like congested up here. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, COVID aside, we got to talk about this Nets team. And we got to talk about what the hell is going on, because these last 3 games have been just abysmal. And I don't think it's a coincidence that it's as soon as the Nets got healthy that we saw this team start playing like crap and the old issues rear its ugly heads of turnovers and rebounding. It's been the same story with this Nets team from the beginning of time, or since last year, really. This team struggles when it comes to turnovers and rebounding. And as soon as James Harden comes back, Durant comes back, all these other guys come back, Bruce Brown, Bembry, LaMarcus Aldridge, guys who, on paper, you're like, this should be helping this Nets team. Immediately, they fall back into their old ways of being a terrible rebounding team and turning the ball over left and right. It's not a coincidence. It's not. The reality of the situation is these young players, Kessler Edwards, Cam Thomas, Day'Ron Sharpe, David Duke Jr., those 4 guys in particular were instrumental into the success of the Nets when those players were out during COVID protocols. And the reason why they were successful was they played hard. It's as simple as that. These young guys played hard. They don't take possessions off like these older veteran players do. And you can't tell me that that's not a fact. Watch James Harden play on defense. He takes possessions off on the defensive end. He always has. That's always been the knock on James Harden, right? Even players like LaMarcus Aldridge and Bruce Brown and DeAndre Bembry, these are guys who are supposed to provide energy all the time. They don't always do that, right? Blake Griffin, he tries, but he's just not consistent enough. And that's what happens. When you become a veteran player in the league, or you become a player that is known to do some other things than just play hard, you take possessions off. And this Nets team can't be doing that. Every time they take a possession off, they get beat. And we saw it these last 3 games, especially in that Clippers loss, which they were up by 15 points going into the 4th quarter, and they blew the lead because they took possessions off. Young players, hungry players, good players don't do that. And the other thing is the balance of the lineup. Look, Steve Nash needs to stop favoring his veteran players and start favoring the better players and players that complement each other better. The other reason why they lost in that Clippers game was because once Patty Mills fouled out of the game, they lost the entire ability to shoot the three-point shot. And because there's not one three-point shooter out there. And what does Steve Nash do? Does he put Kessler Edwards in, who's a very good three-point shooter? No. Does he put Cam Thomas in, who's not a great three-point shooter, but he's definitely more of a threat than anyone else? No. He says, let's go with Bruce Brown, DeAndre Bembry, and James Johnson. All three of those players are terrible three-point shooters. So, of course, if you're the Clippers, you're just going to pack the inside as James Harden tries to go to the basket and just collapse on him and force him to pass the ball out, and none of them are going to make a shot. Real smart coaching would say, geez, we need some more perimeter players out there. Who do I have on my bench who can stretch the floor? To me, Kessler Edwards would have been the best choice. He would have made the most sense in that situation because he's the legit three-point threat. But you're... And like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Oh, well, those guys are the veterans. We can't just take a player who hasn't played all game and plug him in at this point. Why the hell not? And that's why they lost, because they couldn't shoot threes anymore. The defense, the Clippers was condensing in and stopping James Harden every time and making it tough for him. That's why they lost that game. And then the game against the Grizzlies, they just had zero effort from the opening tip. And I don't think it was a coincidence that once Steve Nash put those young guys in garbage time, that the Nets went on a run and made that game competitive. It's clear as day, Steve. You better make the proper adjustments on the next games moving forward. It's clear you need to infuse these younger guys into the rotation regularly to keep the energy level high and to keep the defensive honest. You don't have Joe Harris, so you need another shooter. It should be Kessler Edwards regularly in the rotation at this point because he can stretch the floor. I talked about this earlier on in one of my NetsBoy videos. You need to replace players who are out of your lineup with players with similar skill sets or abilities. If you're missing a shooter, you need to replace them with the best shooter you have. That's why Patty Mills has been starting. Joe Harris used to start. Joe Harris goes out. Patty Mills starts. Makes a lot of sense. Steve Nash did it then. But now you need someone else to replace Patty Mills as a shooter. And I'm sorry, James Johnson is not that guy. James Johnson, Bruce Brown, and DeAndre Bembry, as great as they are, and I like them all because they're all, decent defensive players. They play hard usually, though it does seem like they take some possessions off. They're very good defensive players. They're very good slashers. They're very good at being role players. But if you look at them, all three of them are basically the same type of player, right? Neither of them are great three-point shooters. Neither of them are capable of really scoring regularly. They're just energy defensive players. So as much as they've been playing decently, the reality is you can't be playing all three of them in the rotation regularly. You can't. So Steve Nash needs to make a decision and take one of them out of the rotation. I think it should be James Johnson, because even though I like James Johnson, I think Bruce Brown and DeAndre Bembry are a little bit more consistent and are a little bit more versatile offensively, but can also provide the defense that James Johnson provides. You just got to balance out the lineup, balance out the roster. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. And I just don't think it's a coincidence. This Nets team is struggling because the players that are coming in don't complement each other, and they're just trying to bank on the fact that they have James Harden and Kevin Durant, and they have the more talented team, and they think they're going to go and just win based off of that. That's not going to happen because they still turn the ball over, and they still can't get a damn rebound. And until they start addressing those issues, this team is going to continue to struggle. And look, they're no longer the 1 seed. All right, they dropped to the 2 seed, and the Bucks are right behind them to jump them. This Nets team needs to figure it out. And if you think that Kyrie Irving, who possibly might come back Wednesday night, is going to be the main solution, you are greatly mistaken. Because if anything, Kyrie Irving might actually make things worse at first because the team is going to have no idea how to play. And once again, Steve Nash is going to cater to his stars, cater to his veterans, and the players that should be playing, these young guys, aren't going to see the light of day, and the Nets are probably going to continue to struggle. So I just wish Steve Nash would just step up and say, hey, we need to balance this rotation. We need to balance the veterans with the young guys. Blend it in. No one is saying you need to play Kessler Edwards 35 minutes. Play him 15. No one's saying that Cam Thomas needs to be, scoring 25 points a game. But let him be in the rotation to provide an offense in the second unit. I mean, you see how he single-handedly offensively carried them in the end of that game against the Grizzlies? And even Day'Ron Sharpe. You're getting your butt whooped on the boards, aren't you, Nets? I think it's time that we start realizing Day'Ron Sharpe is probably the best rebounding big on the Nets. Start playing him. Give him a chance. Stop thinking that Blake Griffin is going to somehow be a savior. But no, we got to cater to the veterans. It's the veterans team. Stop it. Stop it. It's just been a disappointment. These last 3 games, which to me were so predictable. As soon as this Nets team became healthy, I said, here we go. Chemistry's going to be a disaster again. Turnovers are going to happen. James Harden's going to do his stupidity like he always does, and the Nets are going to lose. And I will say this. I didn't expect them to lose 3 straight. I didn't expect them to lose to the 76ers, Clippers, and the Grizzlies, all 3 of them. I thought maybe they might lose 1 or maybe 2 at the worst. This is really bad right now. And hopefully they can figure it out. But I don't know. I don't know. Because the reality is I don't see Steve Nash being smart and letting these young guys play more. I see Steve Nash still being stupid and going with these lineups that don't complement each other and just say, well, they're talented, so they should be able to figure it out. I hate that philosophy. You need chemistry. That's really it. I didn't want to spend a lot of time, but because that's my only point that I want to make about this Nets team from what I've seen so far. Steve Nash has got to start giving these young guys opportunity. It's not a coincidence that this team succeeded when the players are out and the young guys got a chance. These are good young players. Kessler Edwards, Day'Ron Sharpe, Cam Thomas. They all are legitimate NBA players. The jury's still out on David Duke Jr. I talked about him before. I think he's got a shot, but the other 3 guys to me definitely are NBA rotational players in my opinion, and they deserve a chance at this point. And this isn't meant to be some kind of knock on James Johnson or Bruce Brown, DeAndre Bembry, Blake Griffin, those guys. They haven't played terribly. It's just they're not doing enough. So let's play these young guys, Steve. And like I said, who knows what's going to happen when Kyrie Irving comes back. This is going to be interesting to watch, but we'll see what happens. So let's go take a look at the next couple games for this Nets team. So Wednesday night could be there's the voice. Wednesday night could be the return of Kyrie against the Pacers. Look, Nets need to win that game. Pacers have been struggling this year. There's the speculation that the Pacers are going to blow up their team. That's a bonus, and LeVert might be traded. How great would it be if the Nets could trade for those guys back? I don't know how they could possibly do it financially, but that would be awesome. Or for LeVert back and throw some bonus in there as well. I don't know how. I would love it, but it won't happen. But anyway, because Sabonis would really fix every issue that the Nets have. He's a very good rebounder, interior player, can stretch the floor, and I just would love LeVert to be back on the Nets. So maybe one of these days I'll try to figure out if there's any type of way the Nets could trade for those guys. The answer is almost certainly no, probably not. But that's for another video. So the Pacers, they really should win that game. Then they have a big game against the Bucks at home, then the Spurs, then the Blazers, and then another big game against the Bulls. Look, the Nets got to start winning games again. They got to win 4 of those next 5 games. That Bucks game and that Bulls game are going to be critical. The Pacers, Spurs, and Trailblazers, they have to win those games. They have to. And we know about how a lot of the games have been rescheduled and they have a tough stretch. Like that Spurs Pacers game is really rough. They go from San Antonio, they go from Brooklyn to Portland, and then they go to Chicago. So they got bouncing all over the place with the rescheduled games. No time for excuses, Nets. It's time to step up. You're become fully healthy. It's time to prove that you're supposed to be one of the best teams in the NBA. So we'll see what happens. So there you have it. Keep your eyes open for the next NetsBoy episode. Hopefully this team can turn it around. Let me know what you guys think. If you agree with me that Steve Nash needs to start playing these young guys more, spread it, balance out the rotation, if you agree that this team looked better before they were fully healthy. And what do you think is going to happen when Kyrie returns? I think it's just going to cause more issues chemistry-wise, but at the same time, the Nets still might be able to win because at the end of the day, Kyrie Irving is still Kyrie Irving, and there's no doubt that he's still unbelievably amazing. And perhaps with Kyrie, the Nets will be able to overcome their, inability to get rebounds and their turnover problems because they will just simply have more talent than other teams. But we'll see. Let me know what you guys think about everything. And keep your eyes open to the next NetsBoy episode. Who knows exactly what it'll be. However, since I currently am in quarantine, maybe it'll be sooner rather than later because right now I'm in day 2 of at minimum of 5 days, because that's what the CDC says now. 5 days when you're fully vaccinated, which I am. Minimum 5 days. So we'll see what happens because I don't got much going on right now. I'm just at home. So stay safe. Like I said, be as smart as you can with this damn COVID. I still can't believe I got it, but whatever. Keep your eyes open to the next NetsBoy. And until then, this is NetsBoy shaking his head and signing off.